Joseph Stalin's early life was marked by hardship and struggle. Born into a poor family in Georgia, then part of the Russian Empire, he endured a difficult childhood overshadowed by poverty and abuse. His father, a cobbler, was often drunk and physically abusive towards his family, while his mother worked tirelessly as a washerwoman to support them. Despite these challenges, Stalin proved to be a bright and ambitious student, excelling in his studies at the local church school. However, Stalin's path to power was not straightforward. Before joining the Bolsheviks, he dabbled in various revolutionary movements, spending time in exile and prison for his activities. It was during this time that he adopted the revolutionary pseudonym Stalin, meaning man of steel, which would come to symbolize his ruthless leadership style. Stalin's rise to prominence within the Bolshevik Party was characterized by cunning and manipulation. As general secretary, he effectively wielded control over party appointments, using his position to eliminate rivals and consolidate power. His Machiavellian tactics and willingness to resort to violence earned him a reputation as a shrewd and formidable leader. Once in power, Stalin embarked on a radical transformation of Soviet society, implementing sweeping economic and social reforms. His ambitious industrialization drive, known as the Five-Year Plans, aimed to modernize the Soviet economy and propel the country into the ranks of global superpowers. However, this rapid industrialization came at a staggering human cost, with millions of workers toiling in harsh conditions and suffering from widespread poverty and deprivation. Stalin's regime was also characterized by paranoia and repression. The Great Purge of the 1930s saw the systematic elimination of perceived enemies of the state, including party officials, military leaders, intellectuals, and ordinary citizens. Millions were arrested, tortured, and executed, while countless others languished in the infamous Gulag labor camps, where conditions were brutal and death was commonplace. Despite the atrocities committed under his rule, Stalin managed to maintain a cult of personality, with propaganda glorifying him as the beloved leader of the Soviet people. His image adorned posters, statues, and public spaces, while his speeches were broadcasted on radio and printed in newspapers, extolling the virtues of socialism and the triumphs of the Soviet Union. Stalin's role in World War II further solidified his status as a towering figure in Soviet history. Leading the country through the darkest days of the conflict, he rallied the Soviet people to resist the Nazi invasion and ultimately played a decisive role in the defeat of Hitler's Germany. However, his wartime leadership was marked by brutality and callousness, with millions of Soviet soldiers and civilians paying the ultimate price for victory. Stalin's death in 1953 marked the end of an era, but his legacy continued to cast a long shadow over the Soviet Union and the world at large. The process of de-Stalinization initiated by his successors sought to dismantle his cult of personality and acknowledge the crimes committed under his rule, but the scars left by his reign would take decades to heal. In the decades since Stalin's death, historians and scholars have continued to grapple with his complex legacy, seeking to understand the man behind the myth and the enduring impact of his rule on the course of world history. Documentaries, speeches, and biographies have shed light on his life and times, exploring his motivations, atrocities, and the lasting consequences of his reign. Despite the passage of time, Joseph Stalin remains a figure of fascination and debate, a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked power and totalitarianism.